I told my wife I was going on a business trip to test her, but when I secretly returned, Liam stood outside the door at nearly 1 a.m. listening to his wife's voice whispering from the home office. That familiar, sweet tone, but cold in a way he'd never heard before. Olivia was talking to someone, each sentence calculated carefully, like she was arranging a secret meeting. His heart pounded, his mouth dry as paper. He thought he'd catch what he feared most. But when the truth emerged, it was more devastating than any affair. And within 72 hours, one of them would lose everything. Before we move on, tell me in the comments which state you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's dive into Liam's shocking discovery. Liam Reyes had learned to read the small signs. 5 years of marriage to Olivia taught him that much. The way she lingered too long over her morning coffee when scrolling through her phone. How she started asking detailed questions about his work schedule, wanting to know exactly which hotels he stayed at during business trips. The sudden interest in their joint bank account passwords for better financial coordination, she'd said with that smile that used to make his chest tight with affection. Now it just made him wary. Liam sat in his project management office at Apex Logistics Group, staring at the Austin conference itinerary he'd been planning to attend. 3 days of supply chain seminars that would normally bore him to tears. But this time he wasn't going to Austin. He was going to test his wife, and he already hated himself for it. The mature thing would be to simply ask Olivia what was wrong, to sit down like adults and work through whatever distance had crept between them. But something cold and calculating had settled in his chest over the past few weeks. Something that whispered about evidence and proof rather than trust and communication. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Don't forget to pack your good suit for the conference dinner tomorrow night. Love you. Liam stared at the message. There was no conference dinner. He'd never mentioned one. Yet somehow his wife knew details about a trip that existed only in his carefully constructed lie. His hands trembled slightly as he typed back, "Thanks, babe. You're so thoughtful." The words felt like ash in his mouth. He'd told Olivia he was attending a 3-day logistics conference in Austin, leaving Thursday morning and returning Sunday evening. Simple enough, but he wouldn't be driving to Austin at all. Liam had reserved a room at the Archer Inn, 15 minutes from their Willow Creek Estate's home, close enough to watch, far enough to maintain the fiction. He told himself he was being smart, strategic. If Olivia was having an affair, he'd gather evidence calmly and handle it through proper legal channels. If she wasn't, he'd return home Sunday night with his suspicions laid to rest and his marriage intact, clean, controlled, dignified. But as he sat in his office, watching the afternoon light fade to the windows, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to discover something far more complicated than simple infidelity. He'd always prided himself on his ability to remain calm under pressure. It's what made him good at his job, managing complex logistics operations and keeping multiple projects running smoothly. But this felt different. This felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one wrong step would send everything tumbling into darkness. Liam closed the Austin conference folder and slipped it into his briefcase. Tomorrow morning, he would kiss his wife goodbye, drive out of their subdivision, and disappear for 72 hours. What he found when he came back would either restore his faith in their marriage or destroy everything he thought he knew about the woman he'd promised to love and cherish. The office around him felt too quiet, too still. Liam gathered his things and headed for the parking garage, his phone already buzzing with another message from Olivia asking what he wanted for dinner. His thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment before he typed, "Surprise me." It seemed fitting somehow because if his suspicions were right, they'd both be in for quite a few surprises over the next 3 days. Liam's hands gripped the steering wheel as he sat in the Archer Inn parking lot, watching the digital clock on his dashboard flip from 11:58 to 11:59 p.m. He'd spent the evening in his hotel room, ordering room service and pretending to review conference materials while his mind raced through possibilities. Now, in the darkness of their quiet subdivision, he felt like a stranger in his own life. The house he'd called home for 3 years sat 2 blocks away, its windows glowing softly against the night sky. Olivia would be asleep by now, or so he thought. But as Liam drove slowly past their street, keeping his headlights dimmed, he could see light spilling from the home office window. His wife was still awake at midnight on a Thursday. The same woman who complained about being tired as she stayed up past 10 p.m. was burning the midnight oil the moment her husband left town. Liam parked 3 houses down behind the Hendersons' oversized SUV and cut the engine. His heart hammered against his ribs as he walked carefully through the shadows between houses, staying clear of motion sensor lights and barking dogs. The closer he got his own home, the more wrong everything felt. This wasn't the behavior of a guilty husband catching his wife with another man. This was something else entirely, something that made his skin crawl with a different kind of dread. Liam positioned himself behind a large oak tree in their backyard, the same tree where he'd hung a tire swing 2 summers ago when they'd talked about starting a family. From here, he had a clear view into the home office through the partially open blinds. Olivia sat at her desk, surrounded by papers and manila folders, her laptop screen casting blue light across her focused features. No romantic candles, no wine glasses, no sign of another person anywhere in the house. Instead, his wife was working with the methodical precision of someone conducting business. Important business, judging by the way she kept checking her phone and making notes in what appeared to be a legal pad. Liam watched her lift the phone to her ear, and even from this distance, he could hear the low murmur of her voice through the slightly open window. Professional, controlled, nothing like the warm, affectionate woman who'd kissed him goodbye that morning. "The documentation is complete," he heard her say, her words carrying clearly in the still night air. "I've established a timeline, and the witness statements are consistent." Liam's blood turned to ice water in his veins. Witness statements. Timeline. This wasn't the language of infidelity. This was the language of something far more calculated, far more dangerous. He pressed himself closer to the tree trunk, straining to hear more. But Olivia's voice had dropped to barely a whisper. The papers on her desk seemed to glow in the lamplight, and Liam could make out what looked like official letterhead on several documents. His wife continued her phone conversation for another 10 minutes, occasionally laughing in a way that sounded nothing like her usual laugh. Cold, strategic. When she finally hung up, Liam watched her organize the papers into neat stacks, sliding them into different folders with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, many times before. She checked her phone one more time, typed something, then stood and stretched. Liam ducked lower behind the tree, his mind racing with questions that he didn't want answered. What timeline? What witnesses? What documentation? As Olivia moved toward the office window to close the blinds, Liam caught a glimpse of her face in the lamplight. The expression he saw there was one he'd never seen before in 5 years of marriage. Satisfied, calculating, victorious. It was a look of someone who just completed an important phase of a complex plan. The blind snapped shut, plunging the backyard into darkness, and Liam was left standing alone under the oak tree, wondering if he'd ever really known his wife at all. He made his way back to his car on unsteady legs, his mind reeling with implications he didn't want to consider. By the time he returned to his hotel room, one thing had become crystal clear. Whatever Olivia was planning, it had nothing to do with another man. Liam's phone buzzed with a text message. "Tomorrow, I'll submit this to HR and it's over." Liam barely slept that night. He sat on the hotel room's stiff chair, replaying every conversation he'd had with Olivia over the past month. The pieces were starting to form a picture he didn't want to see. Her sudden interest in his work relationships, asking about his team dynamics with casual questions that now seemed anything but casual. "How's your boss handling that new compliance review?" she'd asked last week. "Are there any colleagues who might have issues with your management style?" At the time, he'd thought she was just being supportive, showing interest in his professional life. Now, he realized she'd been conducting reconnaissance. Liam pulled out his phone and scrolled through their recent text exchanges, looking for clues he'd missed. There it was, buried in what seemed like innocent chatter. Olivia asking about his signature authority on vendor contracts, his access to sensitive client data, his relationships with the female project coordinators on his team. She'd been mapping his professional vulnerabilities with surgical precision, and he'd handed her every detail like a fool. The text message from last night burned in his memory. "Submit this to HR, not to a divorce attorney, not to another man, to human resources." Liam's stomach clenched as the implications hit him. Olivia wasn't planning to leave him for someone else. She was planning to destroy his career first, then leave him with nothing to rebuild from. The cruelty of it took his breath away. This was his wife, the woman who cried in his arms when her father died, who'd celebrated every promotion and project success alongside him. Now she was systematically building a case to dismantle everything he'd worked for. Liam's hand shook as he dialed Logan Wright, his former colleague, who'd moved to compliance work at a competing firm. They'd maintained their friendship even after Logan left Meridian, bonding over their shared experience of being two of the few black executives in Charlotte's logistics industry. If anyone would understand the delicate position Liam found himself in, it would be Logan. The phone rang 3 times before Logan's familiar voice answered, groggy with sleep. "Liam, man, it's barely 7 a.m. You better be calling from a hospital or a jail cell. I need your professional opinion about something," Liam said, cutting straight to the point. Hypothetically, if someone was building a false narrative about workplace misconduct, what would that look like? The silence on the other end stretched long enough for Liam to wonder if the call had dropped. When Logan finally spoke, his voice had lost all traces of sleepiness. "That's not a hypothetical question, does it? Someone's coming after you." Liam closed his eyes, hating how easily Logan had read between the lines. "Maybe. I'm not sure yet. Listen carefully," Logan said, his tone shifting to the serious, measured cadence he used for compliance consultations. "If someone's building a case, they're collecting documentation, incident reports, witness statements, email trails. They're establishing patterns of behavior and creating timelines. Most importantly, they're doing it quietly, methodically, and they're making sure it looks legitimate." Every word Logan spoke confirmed Liam's worst fears. "What kind of timeline are we talking about?" Liam asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Depends on how thorough they want to be. Could be weeks, could be months. But once they submit, the process moves fast. Investigation, suspension, pending review, possible termination. Even if you're cleared, the damage to your reputation." Logan didn't need to finish. They both knew how these things worked. In their industry, accusations had a way of following you long after investigations were closed. Liam's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "Logan, if I'm right about this isn't just a marriage problem anymore." Liam knew he had to get back into the house. Not to confront Ollie, that would be exactly what she was hoping for, he realized now, but to find concrete evidence of whatever she was building against him. Friday afternoon provided the perfect opportunity. Olivia had mentioned she'd be meeting her sister for an early dinner and shopping. Something about needing to clear her head while he was away. The irony wasn't lost on him. She was clearing her head to better focus on destroying his life. He parked 2 blocks away and walked to their house through the back alley, using his own key to enter through the kitchen door. Everything felt surreal, sneaking into his own home like a burglar. The house smelled like Olivia's vanilla candles and the faint scent of her perfume. Familiar comforts that now felt like mockery. Liam moved carefully through the rooms, listening for any sound that might indicate she returned early. The silence was complete except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the antique clock Olivia had inherited from her grandmother. The home office looked different in daylight, less dramatic than it had appeared through the window at midnight, but somehow more ominous in its ordinariness. Manila folders sat in neat stacks on the desk, labeled with dates spanning the past 3 months. Liam's hands trembled as he opened the first folder, and what he found made his blood run cold. Incident reports detailed professionally written incident reports describing him as emotionally unstable, prone to angry outbursts, and displaying increasingly controlling behavior toward subordinates and family members. But these weren't real incidents. They were fabrications based on twisted versions of normal workplace interactions and household disagreements. The time he'd raised his voice during a budget meeting was described as verbal intimidation of junior staff. A disagreement about their vacation planning had become domestic control tactics and financial manipulation. Most chilling of all was the clinical language used throughout. This wasn't Olivia's natural writing style. Someone had helped her craft these documents with legal precision. Liam photographed each page with his phone, his hands shaking with rage and disbelief. Document after document painted a picture of a man spiraling out of control, becoming dangerous to those around him. The timeline was meticulous, showing a supposed escalation of concerning behaviors that coincidentally began right around the time Olivia started asking about his work responsibilities. Everything was building toward a climax, a final incident that would justify whatever action she was planning to take. At the bottom of the recycling bin beside the desk, Liam found crumpled drafts of the formal complaint. Olivia had gone through multiple versions, refining her accusations with each iteration. The most recent draft included witness statements, names of colleagues who had supposedly observed his disturbing behavior. Liam recognized some of the names, people he'd worked with for years who had never shown any signs of concern about his conduct. Were they part of this conspiracy, or were they unwitting pawns whose casual comments had been twisted into false testimony? The final piece of evidence made Liam's knees weak. At the bottom of the last folder was a business card for Asherstone, described as a family and workplace consultant. Liam had never heard of Asherstone, but apparently this man had been advising Olivia on her strategy for weeks. The card was expensive, embossed, the kind that suggested someone who charged premium rates for premium destruction. A handwritten note on the back in Olivia's careful script read, Phase 2 implementation Monday. Timing critical. Liam sat heavily in the desk chair, surrounded by evidence of his wife's betrayal. This wasn't a crime of passion, or even a marriage falling apart naturally. This was a calculated campaign of character assassination plan with military precision and professional guidance. Olivia hadn't just decided to leave him. She had decided to ensure he could never recover from her departure. The woman he'd loved and trusted had been systematically destroying his reputation and career prospects while he slept beside her each night. His phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had just attempted to reset his company email password. Liam stared at the password reset notification, his mind racing. Someone was trying to access his work email at 2:15 on a Friday afternoon. Not Olivia. She was supposedly at dinner with her sister. This had to be connected to Asherstone, the consultant whose business card he'd found among his wife's carefully organized destruction plans. Liam immediately called his IT department and reported the suspicious activity, requesting an immediate security review of his accounts. Better to be proactive than sorry. But first, he needed to know more about this Asherstone character. Liam used his phone to search the man's name in business, finding a sleek website for Veritas Strategic Consulting that specialized in family transition planning and workplace advocacy. The language was deliberately vague, but the testimonials told a clearer story. Clients praising Asher's ability to protect their interests during difficult separations and ensure favorable outcomes in complex domestic situations. This wasn't marriage counseling. This was professional marriage destruction. Liam remembered now Olivia had mentioned meeting with a financial advisor about their future planning. She'd been so casual about it, mentioning it in passing while they made dinner together. Just getting some advice about our long-term goals, she'd said with that same warm smile that used to make him feel secure. He'd even encouraged her to be thorough to make sure they were making smart decisions about their finances. What a fool he'd been. She hadn't been planning their future together. She'd been planning his individual downfall. The calendar on Olivia's desk showed an appointment for Monday morning at 9 a.m. No location listed, just final review. Liam photographed the calendar page, then carefully returned everything to its original position. He had to get out of the house before Olivia returned, but his mind was already working on the next steps. He needed to know exactly what final review meant and how much time he had before whatever Phase 2 involved went into effect. Liam drove to the office complex where Veritas Strategic Consulting was located. According to the address on the business card, the building was upscale but discreet, the kind of place where people conducted business they didn't want widely known. He parked across the street and waited, feeling ridiculous but desperate for any additional information. At 4:30, he saw Olivia's silver sedan pull into the parking garage. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this part of town. Not if she was having dinner with her sister, like she'd told him. 20 minutes later, Olivia emerged from the building with two people. A man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit who had to be Asherstone, and a woman Liam didn't recognize. They stood outside the building's entrance, speaking in low tones while the woman took notes on a legal pad. Liam used his phone to zoom in and take photos. his hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Whatever they were discussing, it was serious business, professional business. The meeting broke up with handshakes all around, the kind of formal conclusion that suggested important agreements had been reached. Olivia drove away first, followed by the woman in a black Mercedes with law firm plates. Asher Stone remained behind, speaking on his phone with animated gestures that suggested he was reporting to someone else entirely. Liam sat in his car, watching this man who was helping his wife destroy him, and felt something cold and calculating settle in his chest. Two could play the professional destruction game. His phone rang with a call from Meridian's IT security. "Mr. Reed, we need to discuss some unusual access patterns on your accounts." Liam didn't panic when security called. Instead, he drove straight to the offices of Kingston Law Group, a law firm he'd researched during his lunch break. Charlotte Hayes had built her reputation defending executives against workplace retaliation and false accusations. If anyone could help him navigate the legal minefield his wife had constructed, it would be her. The consultation fee was steep, but Liam's career and reputation were worth far more than the hourly rate. Charlotte Hayes was exactly what Liam had expected. Sharp, professional, and completely unimpressed by his story until he showed her the photographs of Olivia's fabricated incident reports. Then her expression shifted from polite skepticism to focused intensity. She studied each image carefully, making notes on a legal pad while Liam explained the timeline of events. When he finished, she leaned back in her leather chair and delivered her assessment with surgical precision. "Your wife isn't just planning to divorce you, Mr. Reed. She's constructing a narrative that will follow you for the rest of your career. These documents are designed to make you unemployable in your industry." Dana's words confirmed his worst fears, but her calm delivery somehow made them easier to process. The good news is that she's left a paper trail. The bad news is that she's working with professionals who know exactly how these processes work. We need to move quickly and strategically. Liam felt something like relief wash over him for the first time in days. Finally, someone who understood the stakes and had a plan to address them. Donna outlined a defensive strategy that was both comprehensive and elegant. First, they would secure his digital assets and establish a documented timeline of his actual workplace behavior. Second, they would gather evidence of conspiracy against him while being careful not to engage in any retaliatory behavior that could be used against him later. Third, they would prepare for the inevitable HR investigation by controlling the narrative before Olivia could submit her fabricated reports. "The key," Charlotte explained, "is to let your wife believe she's still in control while we systematically dismantle her case. She's counting on you reacting emotionally, doing something stupid that validates her accusations. Instead, we're going to respond with facts, documentation, and legal procedure. By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll have already neutralized her strategy." Liam appreciated the clinical approach. This wasn't about revenge or winning some marital chess game. This was about protecting his livelihood and reputation through legitimate means. Dana's investigator would conduct discreet background checks on Asher Stone and identify the woman Liam had seen at the meeting. Meanwhile, Liam would maintain his cover story about the business trip while carefully documenting every interaction with his wife. Most importantly, he would not confront Olivia or give any indication that he knew about her plans. "Let her dig her hole deeper," Charlotte advised. "The more elaborate her conspiracy becomes, the easier it will be to expose in court or before an HR panel." The meeting concluded with Charlotte scheduling an emergency session for Monday morning, just hours before Olivia's final review with Asher Stone. Liam signed a retainer agreement and left the law office feeling something he hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Hope. Not hope that his marriage could be saved. That ship had sailed the moment he found those fabricated incident reports. But hope that he could emerge from this betrayal with his dignity and career intact. As Liam walked his car, his phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Miss you already. Can't wait for you to come home Sunday." The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. She was literally planning to his professional assassination while sending loving messages. Charlotte had been clear about the next step. Let her take one more step into the trap. Then we closed the door. Saturday night, Liam made his move. He'd spent the day analyzing Olivia's patterns, timing his return for maximum impact. She would be relaxed, confident, believing she had another full day before his scheduled return from Austin. The house was dark, except for the familiar glow from the home office window. Liam parked 3 blocks away and approached through the neighbor's backyard using the route he'd mapped out during his previous surveillance. This time he was prepared for what he might hear, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of his wife's rehearsal session. Liam crouched beneath the office window, listening to Olivia practice her performance with chilling precision. She was alone, but speaking as if addressing an HR panel or mediator. Her voice carried clearly through the slightly open window as she ran through various scenarios, testing different emotional inflections for maximum impact. When Liam loses his temper, he becomes verbally abusive, she said, her tone shifting from concerned to frightened. I've tried to de-escalate these situations, but his behavior has only gotten worse. The calculated nature of her preparation was nauseating. This wasn't a woman driven by fear or desperation. This was a woman rehearsing lines of performance of her life, one designed to destroy her husband's career and reputation. Liam listened as she practiced crying on cue, modulating her voice to sound like a victim who had endured months of escalating abuse. She even had prepared responses for potential challenges to her story. I know this is hard to believe, she practiced, saying Liam presents very differently in professional settings. That's part of what makes the situation so difficult. What made Liam's blood freeze was hearing her practice the recording setup. She was planning to provoke him into an angry response when he returned from his business trip, then use his reaction as evidence of his instability. I'll mention the promotion opportunity at Henderson Logistics, she murmured to herself. That always makes him defensive about his career trajectory. If I pushed the right buttons, she trailed off, but the implication was clear. She knew exactly which topics would trigger an emotional response, and she was planning to weaponize his vulnerabilities against him. Liam watched through the window as Olivia reviewed what appeared to be a script, complete with stage directions for how to position herself during their conversation. She had planned every detail, from where she would punish her phone to record their interaction to how she would document his threatening behavior in real time. This wasn't just marital manipulation. This was psychological warfare conducted with professional guidance and methodical precision. The most chilling moment came when her phone rang. Liam strained to hear as Olivia answered with a voice completely different from her rehearsal tone. Cold, businesslike, victorious. Everything's ready for Monday, she said. The timeline is perfect. The documentation is complete, and I'll have the final piece of evidence by Sunday night when he gets home. There was a pause as she listened to whoever was on the other end. No, he has no idea. He still thinks he's testing me for an affair. Liam heard her laugh, a sound devoid of any warmth he remembered. He's about to lose everything, and he thinks he's the one in control. Liam didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his hotel room methodically planning his response with the cold precision Olivia had taught him through her example. By dawn, he had contacted Charlotte Hayes' emergency line and set everything in motion. The beauty of having a legal strategy was that every move could be executed through proper channels, making it impossible for Ollie to claim harassment or retaliation. Liam was about to give his wife a masterclass in professional destruction, legally and ethically conducted. Dana's team moved with impressive efficiency. By 8 a.m. Sunday, they had filed formal asset protection notices with both their bank and Liam's company, citing concerns about potential identity theft and unauthorized access attempts. The IT security department at Apex Logistics Group received a comprehensive report detailing the suspicious password reset attempts, complete with timestamps that corresponded exactly to Olivia's meetings with Asherstone. Logan Wright provided expert testimony about the patterns of workplace sabotage, lending credibility to Liam's defensive measures. The most elegant aspect of Dana's strategy was how it turned Olivia's own timeline against her. Every fabricated incident report she had created was now documented evidence of a systematic campaign of character assassination. Her detailed records meant to destroy Liam's credibility instead became proof of premeditation and conspiracy. Charlotte had already scheduled a meeting with Meridian's legal department for Monday at 10 a.m., just 1 hour after Olivia's final review with Asherstone. The timing wasn't coincidental. Liam's phone records, email logs, and documented work performance over the past year painted a clear picture of a competent professional with no history of the behavioral issues Olivia had fabricated. More importantly, Dana's investigator had uncovered Asher Stone's background, a disbar attorney who had reinvented himself as a family consultant after losing his license for ethics violations. The woman at their meeting was Gianna Silva, a junior associate at a law firm that specialized in contentious divorces and workplace retaliation cases. By Sunday afternoon, Liam had established an unbreakable legal foundation. His assets were protected. His employer was aware of the situation and supportive of his position, and he had documented evidence of the conspiracy against him. Olivia's carefully constructed plan was about to collapse under the weight of its own elaborate deception. But Liam wasn't finished yet. Charlotte had advised one final strategic move that would demonstrate unequivocally that they held all the cards. Liam checked out his hotel and drove home at exactly the time he had originally planned to return from Austin. He pulled into their driveway with his conference materials and luggage, playing his role as the unsuspecting husband returning from a business trip. Ollie greeted him at the door with what appeared to be genuine affection, asking about his conference and expressing how much he had missed him. The performance was flawless, which made her betrayal even more chilling. "How was your weekend?" Liam asked, settling into their living room as if nothing had changed. Olivia launched into a detailed account of her supposed activities: dinner with her sister, shopping, quiet time at home, catching up on reading. Every word was a lie delivered with practiced sincerity. Liam nodded and smiled in all the right places, playing a devoted husband, while internally marveling at her ability to deceive so effortlessly. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of a perfectly executed plan. Liam kissed Olivia goodbye as she left for her 9 a.m. appointment with Asher Stone, watching her drive away with the confidence of someone who believed she held all the cards. She had no idea that Charlotte Hayes and her legal team were already waiting in Conference Room B at Apex Logistics Group along with Logan Wright, the company's head of human resources, and Liam himself. The meeting Olivia thought she was controlling had been redirected into Liam's carefully prepared arena. At 9:15, Liam's phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Something's wrong. Asher's office is closed. Going to call you." Liam didn't respond. Instead, he watched through the conference room's glass walls as building security escorted Olivia and Gianna Silva into the elevator. The confusion on his wife's face would have been satisfying if the situation weren't so devastating. Asher Stone was notably absent. Dana's investigator had discovered he was already facing disciplinary action from the State Bar Association for his unlicensed practice of law. When Olivia entered the conference room and saw Liam sitting calmly at the table, her mask of composure cracked for just a moment, long enough for everyone present to see the calculation behind her usual warmth. Charlotte stood and introduced herself with professional courtesy, then methodically laid out the evidence of conspiracy and attempted character assassination. The fabricated incident reports, the timeline of meetings with Hart Strategic Consulting, the documented attempts to access Liam's work accounts, the recorded conversations planning to provoke and document Liam's emotional responses. Gianna Silva, the junior associate who had been advising Olivia, immediately began distancing herself from the situation. She claimed to have believed Olivia's accusations were legitimate and insisted her firm would never knowingly participate in false reporting. Her hasty backpedaling only reinforced how thoroughly the conspiracy had collapsed once exposed to legal scrutiny. Olivia sat in stunned silence as her carefully constructed narrative disintegrated piece by piece. Each document Charlotte presented stripping away another layer of her deception. The most damaging evidence came from Liam's own documentation of the weekend's events. Charlotte played excerpts from the recordings Liam had legally made outside his own home. North Carolina's one-party consent laws made them admissible, where Olivia could be heard rehearsing her victim performance and discussing the timeline for his professional destruction. The clinical detachment in her voice as she planned his downfall was more damning than any angry outburst could have been. Logan Wright provided expert testimony about the sophisticated nature of the workplace sabotage attempt, explaining how such campaigns typically unfold and why this particular case showed clearer signs of professional coordination. Human Resources Director Camila Garcia had seen enough workplace retaliation cases to recognize the severity of what Olivia had attempted. The company's legal counsel explained the potential criminal charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, defamation, attempted extortion through false accusations, and cybercrime related to the unauthorized access attempts. Each charge carried significant penalties, and the coordinated nature of the conspiracy elevated the severity considerably. Olivia's face went ashen as the full scope of her legal exposure became clear. What she had thought was a clever strategy to secure her financial future had instead opened her to significant criminal and civil liability. The financial implications were staggering. Liam's attorney outlined the damages he could claim: loss of reputation, emotional distress, potential career impact, and the cost of legal defense. The conspiracy had been so thorough that it created liability from multiple parties, including Asherstone's consulting business and Gianna Silva's law firm. Asset freezes would be implemented immediately to prevent any attempt to hide funds before civil proceedings concluded. The meeting concluded with Meridian's attorneys issuing formal cease and desist orders regarding any further contact with Liam's colleagues or attempts to access company systems. Gianna Silva's law firm would be reported to the state bar for their role in the conspiracy, and Asherstone faced additional charges for practicing law without a license. Olivia's carefully orchestrated character assassination had backfired spectacularly, leaving her facing the very professional and legal destruction she had planned for her husband. As the room cleared, Olivia finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Liam, but he held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. There was nothing she could say that would undo what she had done. No explanation that could justify the systematic betrayal he had uncovered. Charlotte gathered her files with the efficiency of someone who had seen this particular form of domestic warfare before. The legal system would handle the consequences from here. Olivia's final words as she left the conference room were delivered with chilling calmness. You think you understand what just happened here, but you have no idea how deep this goes. 3 months later, Liam stood in his new corner office at Apex Logistics Group, watching the Charlotte skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The promotion had come with an apology from senior management and a significant salary increase. The company's way of acknowledging how close they'd come to losing a valuable employee to a sophisticated fraud. The irony wasn't lost on him that Olivia's attempt to destroy his career had ultimately accelerated it instead. The divorce proceedings had concluded with surprising efficiency once all parties understood the evidence Charlotte had compiled. Olivia's legal team had advised her to accept Liam's terms rather than face the civil and criminal charges that would accompany a contested divorce. She'd lost her bid for alimony, faced significant legal fees, and would spend the next 2 years rebuilding her own career after the Bar Association's investigation into her conspiracy became public record. The house they'd share was sold with Liam keeping his fair share, while Olivia dealt with the financial consequences of her choices. Asherstone's consulting business had been shuttered permanently after criminal charges were filed for the unlicensed practice of law and conspiracy to commit fraud. Gianna Silva's law firm had quietly settled with Liam for an undisclosed sum and implemented new client verification procedures to prevent future involvement in fabricated cases. The professional network that had enabled Olivia's scheme had been systematically dismantled through proper legal channels, creating accountability that would prevent similar situations for other potential victims. Liam had chosen not to pursue the maximum penalties available to him. There was no satisfaction in complete destruction, only in the restoration of truth, in the establishment of clear boundaries. He'd learned something valuable about the difference between justice and revenge. One restored balance, while the other perpetuated cycles of harm. Charlotte had respected his decision, though she'd ensured that all legal protections remained in place should Olivia ever attempt future retaliation. The most unexpected outcome had been Liam's relationship with his colleagues and industry peers. Rather than viewing him as damaged goods, they'd rallied around him once the facts became clear. His handling of the situation, calm, professional, focused on legal remedies rather than emotional reactions, had actually enhanced his reputation for integrity and sound judgment. Logan Wright had been instrumental in sharing Liam's story within compliance circles, creating awareness about sophisticated domestic sabotage attempts that could help protect other professionals. On this particular Friday afternoon, Liam was reviewing project proposals when his assistant knocked and entered a familiar manila envelope. Inside was a letter from Olivia, postmarked from Austin, where she'd relocated after the divorce. He almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was brief, written in her careful handwriting. Liam, I know you'll never forgive what I did, and I don't expect you to. I want you to know that losing you wasn't part of the original plan. That part became real even when everything else was calculated. I hope you find happiness. It was signed Simply B. Liam read the letter twice, then placed it in his desk drawer. He felt neither anger nor sadness, just a profound sense of closure. The woman he'd married had been real. But she'd also been capable of systematic betrayal when circumstances aligned with her perceived interests. Both things could be true simultaneously, and accepting that complexity had been part of his healing process. He'd learned to trust his instincts while maintaining appropriate boundaries, to verify important information while not becoming paranoid or controlling. The afternoon sun streamed through his office windows as Liam returned to his project reviews. His life had found a new rhythm: professional success, personal peace, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from handling crisis with dignity intact. He'd started dating again, taking things slowly, and applying the lessons learned about the importance of character, consistency over superficial charm. His future felt open and bright, built on a foundation of authentic relationships and clear personal boundaries. Sometimes the greatest betrayal comes not from strangers, but from those we trust most. Liam's story reminds us that truth and legal strategy will always triumph over manipulation and lies. When faced with deception, responding with dignity and evidence, not emotion, protects both your integrity and your future. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching.